about Abu Rashid. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay. We were talking about margin analysis. Margin analysis is nothing but the analysis of how an individual or a consumer or a businessman or even a government make decision when they are into a problem of optimizing their activity. So, in marginal analysis, we have some terms and concepts we need we need to clear. So in this session, we are emphasizing about some concepts and terminology. So the optimizing behavior on the part of a decision maker, which decision maker can be any agent that I told you earlier, this consumer, producer, whoever it is. So if they always try to maximize their objective function, they will have some optimization problem, and their objective, everybody has some kind of objective, right? Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
My screen is visible, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Everything perfect, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody will have some objectives, right? Let's relate that into our objective function in this terminology. Up to this class we were talking like a layman language, that I was telling you that it's like nothing but the common sense. The marginal analysis was nothing but the common sense that we are applying in everyday life. But now we come into this economic terms and terminology. So first, when we are talking about marginal analysis, first we have to talk about the objective function. So it's nothing but what will be our objective while making a decision. Either it can be a maximization or it can be a minimization, right?
That's fine.
Yeah. So, can you say some example for what will be an objective function for a manager or a firm, a company, in totality?
Maximize profit.
Managers' objective function always maximize the profit, right? Consumers' objective function always satisfaction. Maximize or minimize satisfaction? Obviously, maximize, right? Again, what will be the objective function of a marketing manager? Is not maybe not interested in making profit, but his interest will be on sales. Sales, maximization. So, in objective function, we come into two aspects. One is maximization, another one is minimization. Always we try to minimize what? Always we try to maximize the positive aspect of anything, and we try to minimize the negative aspect of anything. Cost is negative or positive?
Negative.
Yeah, cost. So always, in very simple terms, in marginal analysis, we always try to maximize benefit and minimize the cost. For a city manager, for example, if you can, a city manager forgot to tell you, I will upload one book after this class. It's about Christopher Thomas and Charles Morris book on managerial economics, foundations of business analysis and strategy. I referred this book for this class for introducing the concept and terminology. Okay, and I would like to tell you that always refer the foreign author book when you are reading, especially economic concepts and terminology, because in your, I don't think in a mock syllabus you won't get any prescribed textbook. But in our own time, even this time, it is usually people or even if it is MA or BA, what people are doing is buy some prescribed syllabus textbook that is only a guide, not a book that you need to have refer. Okay, so whenever you are referring something, always go for an original book, not the prescribed syllabus text. I won't call this a textbook. This is a guide. In our own time, there was a professor's story, I think. Even we didn't know that. We were not aware about it. But we all learned that kind of book. And what is the problem with that book is we only get the concept. That also not clarified. But when you read an foreign author book, you will get a lot of examples and you can relate. If you are not able to relate with your own surroundings, you can relate with your own surroundings in your own way. So always try to read foreign author book or original book. Even if it is, I'm not appreciating the foreign authors, but original book. Even if it is Indian, Amartya's book is original. You can read it, but don't go for guide kind of book. Okay, so the one book I have already uploaded in your Google Classroom. That is also very nice book. It's kind of you will get the concept in very clear in very nutshell, and at the end of each chapter you will get a lot of example, so you can practice each at least one problem. So concept will be more clear. What you want is whole concept should be clear, what it should be. To make it more clear, the last classes I was explaining a lot of examples. That is, what is this? This term is very simple. This is marginal. It is nothing but the addition. But when I say this is not net addition to total, you won't get anything. If you are not relating with the real life example, you won't get net addition. You will get marks in exam, of course, but that is not the case. That is not the good way of learning. Okay, right? So, can you please respond?
Yes, ma'am.
Tamam.
So after this class, I will upload one book and I will give you some assignment most probably this week. You need to write some this. I will give you some questions or some concepts. So you have to write and submit. Okay. So in the case of cost minimization, think about a government. So government always wants to deliver goods, or even if it is goods or services, with the minimum possible cost, and try to deliver the goods and services with high quality. So always a government optimization problem is cost minimization, giving best quality of goods and services. And what about it? Can say any other example for cost minimization? Not cost minimization, about minimization. Minimization problem. We have maximization function like profit maximization, satisfaction maximization, sales maximization. As in the case of minimization, it would be cost. Any other real life example that you always try to minimize? Anyone? Any guess? Anything? This I told you this economics is not a pure science and not a pure art. So nobody is right and nobody is wrong. If you have some kind of logic, you might be right.
Risk
Sorry?
minimization.
Yes. Risk minimization. Always try to minimize risk. Any other example?
Unwanted moves of employees. പ്രോസസ്സ് കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ആവശ്യമില്ലാത്ത പ്രോസസ്സ് എലിമിനേറ്റ് ചെയ്തു.
Unwanted move of employees. I didn't get.
Unwanted use of resource.
Breaking. Sorry?
Resource, unwanted use of resource.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. And you will get more, you will be cleared more by, if you think about a lifeguard. What is the responsibility of lifeguard? Rescuing drowning persons, right? So for his objective function would be minimize the time. That time is the most important factor, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So his optimization problem is cause time minimization, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now you got the point. That's why I put this lifeguard example. No need more explanation. This is what is maximization and minimization concept. Whatever it is, it may not be a profit, it may not be a cost. We call it as a benefit and we call it as a cost. Time is also a cost. Time has a value, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Time is very precious and it has some value, it has some cost. So that is the cost. Not take everything in money terms. This benefit, we cannot measure satisfaction in money terms, right? We cannot measure time directly. I'm talking directly. You can relate money and time, but you cannot directly measure the value of time in money terms. Okay, so cost minimization always aims to achieve the most effective way of delivering goods and services to the required level of quality. Okay, now you got the idea of the objective function, maximization problem, minimization. All you got?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So maximization is problem is an optimization. Minimization problem also is an optimization. But we are trying to optimize. One is the profit if it is a maximization. And if it is a cost, we try to minimize. Okay. So our maximization problem can be defined as an optimization problem that involves maximizing the objective function. Now you got the objective function, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Minimization problem, an optimization problem that involves minimizing the objective function. Okay, now we have another term that we call as, normally we call it as an independent variable, or in your textbook, it is given as activities or choice variable. That the variable that determines the value of objective function. That is, the value of objective function is, what is objective function? For a manager, for example, if it is for a manager, it would be profit, right? So the profit is the value of objective function is determined by the level of one or more activities or choice variable. It can be an activity if it is in this case of business, or it can be a product if it is in the case of consumer or income, anything. Those who have studied economics, income consumption function. Economic students, consumption depends on what? Consumption of a consumer depends on what? Very briefly, there are many other factors. Normally, your consumption depends on what?
Utility and income.
Utility, there should be some utility, then only we consume. Right? Price. You want to
Income.
Yes, income. Yes. Then?
Taste and preference.
Type of goods.
Taste and preference. One more is there.
Demand.
That is our consumption. Demand means what you mean?
Ma'am, price of alternative goods.
Yes, correct, exactly. The price of substitute goods. Isn't it? The price, the consumption of a commodity depends upon the price of that commodity, the consumer's income, the taste and preference of consumer, maybe the least one, and the price of substitute good, similar kind of good, right? So this is a function. There you can see here two kind of variables are. One is dependent variable, other one is independent variable. What is dependent variable? Here, the case of consumption, one side consumption depends upon the income of the person, then
Taste and preference.
Taste and preferences, price of the commodity, then price of substitute goods. So here, can you identify the dependent and independent variable here? Very easily. What is dependent variable? The variable consumption. Consumption is dependent upon. There are some independent variable. What are the? Income. These are all independent variable. Consumption, income influences consumption. Taste and preference of consumer influences consumption. Price of substitute good influences consumption of that particular good. You want any example? It's clear? What example?
Yes.
A very typical example. For example, tea. Classical, typical. Or another example is rain. Rain depends on what? What we are learning about, what we are studying about is our dependent variable. You are studying about rain, right? മഴയെ പറ്റി പഠിക്കുക. Rain depends upon what? No idea, right? We cannot say anything about nowadays. Right. So let's leave that example. Income consumption is a very good example, but you are not getting it. So we will go to this tea example. So tea, the demand for a tea. Okay. The consumption of tea that you are taking, as a consumer, you want to buy tea. Okay. Your consumption of a tea depends upon the price of, for example, Kanandevan, brand Kanandevan. Okay. Kanandevan, the consumption of Kanandevan brand depends upon the price of that brand, that Kanandevan classic, for example, variant of Kanandevan tea. So, same way, this consumption or demand for Kanandevan also depend upon the price of Ebd3 or any other brand, right? It depends upon, if sometime I am not preferring tea, but my preference is might be for coffee, or depends upon season, I won't prefer tea. Sometime I need to have juice or lemon juice, something like that. So it also depends upon my taste and preferences. And sometime my income has increased or decreased. So someday I want to change my brand. If my income increase, I will go for some superior brand. And if my income is low, I will go for some inferior brand. Right? There might be change. Clear? So my income, my taste and preference, my the substitute goods price, all depends up all are influencing the consumption of tea. So here tea, the consumption of tea or demand for tea is a dependent variable which depend upon these so many other variables. So-called variables like income, price of substitute good, taste and preferences, and price of that particular commodity. So these are the independent variable. So X, my consumption dependent variable always is denoted by X. X is a function of, or the demand for tea is a function of the price of the tea, the income of the consumer. You are not getting?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
The price of the substitute goods. So think about if I don't know how to use this Jamboard, otherwise I could have shown you this thing. So you know the sign equal to, right? Equal to 4 is equal to 4. Likewise we right. So in the similar way, independent variable, that is the demand for the consumption of something depends upon, in the right side of equal to we write, this is a mathematical expression, income of that person, price of that particular commodity, taste and preferences, and price of substitute goods. In the same way, if we get back to this marginal analysis, here we use in the book I preferred use activities or choice variable as independent variable. So profit depends upon, profit is your objective function, that is the dependent variable, choice variable as independent variable, right? Now you got the point? Activities, you just leave this activities, you take only the choice variable or the variable, that is nothing but the independent variable. Your objective function depends upon this choice variable, whatever choices you are making, that will influence your objective functions. For example, your objective function is determined by the level of one or more activities or choice variable. The value of profit depends on the number of units of output produced and sold. Here, the profit is the dependent variable. It depends on the number of units of output produced, how many output you are producing and how many you are selling. So you got the point? You have to make choice of how many units you have to produce, how many you have to sell. That is your choice variable in the case of business. If it is in the case of consumption and satisfaction, the last class I show you some table, right? First ice cream, you will get some kind of satisfaction. The second ice cream, you will get lesser level of satisfaction. After some point of time, you will reach a saturation point. There you decide to consume more or less or stop the consumption, right? So your consumption depends upon how many, or your satisfaction depends upon how many units you are consuming. You are not getting my point? No? So this is nothing but the choice variable is nothing but that variable that determines the value of objective function. Here, very simple term, objective function is the problem that we are dealing with, and the choice variable is that we can change the choice variable to get more benefit. You can add or minimize the level of variables or the level of activities. That's we can maximize our benefit, right? You will get, for example, Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
I can see a lot of some questions, problems, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is the book that I was talking about. So let's go through some examples. First one, for each of the following decision-making problem, you are given some decision-making problems. You can read it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's you will be more clarified after reading this. Okay. For each of the following decision-making problem, determine whether the problem involves constraint or unconstrained optimization. Constraint optimization that I was talking about in the last class, there should be some constraint we will have to face, like price constraint, or you have to minimize the cost. So the optimization problem are two types. One is constrained and other one is unconstrained. Let's leave it. Let's move to that in the next class. But here, what the objective function, you have to identify the given from the given problem is what is the objective function and what is the constraint and what the choice variables are. Okay. The first one, we have received a foundation grant to purchase new PCs for the staff. You decide what PCs to buy. One more, I'm reading this. We have received a foundation grant. You have some money with you to purchase new PCs for the staff. Okay. You decide what PCs to buy. So what will be your objective function here?
To buy a PC
Yeah.
with good
By a PC, you have some constraint, right? What is that constraint? Your constraint is the grant.
What's PC? That's constraint.
Huh?
What's PC?
What PC? No.
Within the money we have.
Yeah, your constraint is the foundation grant. Within that limit, you have to buy. Right? And what will be your choice? If you are buying a PC, it depends upon your purpose also. Your student's purpose for PC may be different for a graphic designer PC, right?
yes.
So you will have this choice variables like brand, value, the purpose, right? And what will be your objective function? Buy PC is a statement. Is it a maximization or minimization? If it is a maximization, what you are going to maximize? If it is a minimization, what you are going to minimize?
Minimize the price, maximize the PC.
Maximize?
PC.
Maximize PC means what? Maximize the benefit that you getting after the usage of PC that you mean. Think about it. Now we will move to the next example. We can get more clear about it. Second one, we are not earning enough profit, right? Your job is to redesign our advertising program and decide how much TV, direct mail, and magazine advertising to use. whatever we are doing now is not working very well. What is the objective function here?
Redesigning the advertisement.
That is our job. What is our objective? Objective function have two purpose. One is maximize, other one is minimize, right? How do you maximize?
Maximization.
Sorry?
Profit maximization.
Yes, exactly. Profit maximization. That is the objective function. Okay. Now, what is our constraint? What is our choice variable here? Our profit depends upon how much TV, direct mail, magazine advertising, spending, or expenses, right? Our job is redesign our advertising program. That's the given job. For that, we have some objective function, we have some choice variable, we have some constraint. Right? Not getting? Read it once more, everyone.